Hi guys, welcome to our English talk show. Today we are very honored to have invited the president of Cengage Global Businesses to be on our show, Mr. Alexander Broich. Hi, Alexander, welcome to our talk show.
Thank you very much, thanks for having me.
Welcome to China. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you.
It is the first time here in China?
No, I'm coming to China now for 20 years.
20 years.
For 20
so
years,
you're
yeah.
old friend to China now.
Absolutely, love to be here.
How do you like China?
Well, over the last 20 years, I have not seen any other country in the world which has changed so much. I mean, it's just breathtaking. Every time I come back, things have changed again. It's really a fascinating place, probably the most fascinating country these days on earth.
Oh, wow. Very glad to hear that. I know you're an expert in transforming lives and also learning in different countries around the world.
Yeah.
So how do you see China different from other countries?
Well, I mean, first of all countries to some extent are unique. Each country has its own approach to learning, to education. The institutions are different. At the same time, they also share a number of things. So the China school system has a primary and a secondary, and has a higher education market. It has a lot of people who want to learn English. So there are a number of things which are comparable, you find elsewhere, but of course it is distinctively different in many respects. And one aspect, for example, is for us interesting, is specifically English learning. There is no other market of the size of China in terms of English learning, not only just because China is a big country and has many people, but also China's commitment to learn English is pretty unmatched in the world.
I see, yeah. In many places, people put a lot of focus and almost a lot of time in learning English. Yeah. And I can't help but notice there's one sentence for the background here: bring the world to the classroom and the classroom to life.
This is the slogan for our English language teacher, National Geographic business, and what it means is that in the past, you still find this today somewhere, that learning English is often seen as an element of cultural heritage and legacy. So you learn English to understand Great Britain, and you want to send your kids to Great Britain, and then you learn about the culture of that country and the literature. But this is not the way how we approach that, because I'm a language learner as well. I'm German, and when I learned English, I learned this the traditional way. So I learned about Shakespeare, and when I could read Shakespeare on a train, but I couldn't buy a train ticket, because the way we learned English was not the way so you use it. It was very oriented towards understanding the British system, the British literature. We at National Geographic want to teach English in a way that it's a tool, it's a capability for students to interact in the world.
I see, to enable you to accomplish certain tasks.
To enable you to practical English in sports, in entertainment, in business, or whatever purpose you need it for. And in order to do that, we don't teach England or America, we teach the world. So when you look into our material, be it a book or be it digital, it is the world. You find Chinese kids in there, you find Brazilian kids in there, you find the situation from the life as it exists. And that is the part of bringing the world to the classroom, and by doing this, you bring the classroom to life.
Wow, very good. So while English, you get to see the whole world.
That's true. It's a key to the world.
I see. And also, we just talked about National Geographic learning and Cengage. I think some of the viewers may not know what's the connection, what's the relation between Cengage and National Geographic.
So National Geographic is a society, and it's a foundation, and they support explorers. So they give grants to explorers, and they publish this wonderful magazine, the National Geographic magazine. And these explorers are fascinating people who have certain ideas they really want to find out in the world, whether they dig out dinosaur bones or they dive to the ocean ground and find the Titanic or whatever it might be. And we have a very close collaboration with National Geographic in a sense that we acquired their educational publishing, and that we are the exclusive partner of National Geographic if it comes to educational publishing. That means we have access to all the content National Geographic produces. For example, the explorers produce a lot of videos,
Yes, I
and
do.
a lot of beautiful pictures, as you might have seen in the magazines.
Yes.
And so we can use these materials and put them in the center of our learning experience, so that students don't learn from, made up stories and cartoonish pictures, but actually from fascinating things of what the explorers do. They learn with videos. They can actually live interact with the explorers. It's a whole different way to learn language.
Yeah, very good. I'm very much impressed. And also, I think the audience may have seen the interview that I had with Corey, one of the National Geographic Explorer, because I was very lucky to have invited to attend the National
World
Geographic Learning Conference a few months ago in Beijing.
Yep.
And I got a wonderful experience learning a lot of stuff from the event, and also meeting a lot of wonderful people from Cengage and National Geographic. Corey was one of them. And also I was very much impressed by the innovation that Cengage you have here.
Yep.
Yeah, speaking of innovation, this is something that many educators are doing and are very committed to. In your personal experience, what are some innovations that in the education sector that impress you the most so far?
There are many in these days, and I think it's important to note that during the last 10 years, I think it's fair to say we have seen more innovation in education than probably in the 100, if not 500 years before. Because if you think about a classroom 100 years ago, 500 years ago, it looked pretty much the same. So you have a teacher standing in front of a class, then the students lining up, sitting all there, and listening to what the person in front is telling them to do.
Yeah.
Not much interaction. This was the way it works. And this was the way
Teacher-centered.
Teacher-centered, very one way, and whether it's a classroom 200 years ago in Brazil, or 100 years ago in Germany, or 50 years ago in China, they effectively all looked the same. There wasn't any technology, and the way of the interaction was very standardized, and it really hasn't changed over hundreds of years. And only recently we have seen an explosion of innovation and put technology to work for education. Some of them have not played out. I think there were some attempts to use technology for the technology's sakes. That doesn't make any sense. But we have seen a lot of very productive ways to use technology. And productive, I mean that they increase the engagement of students, and with that they increase the outcome of learning. That is what it ultimately is how it makes sense to use technology.
Exactly. That's the goal of learning, right?
That's the ultimate goal, and technology should enhance that. And we have seen, and in that framework, we have seen in the last few years a number of fascinating developments, and we at Cengage, of course, have made use of them by either partnering with companies. We have acquired companies. We are today a big technology company ourselves to, for example, to develop digital courseware, to enhance language learning through speech recognition, etc., etc.
I see. It's kind of shaping the world.
It's shaping the world, and you go, if we go to the higher education sector today, at least in the United States, the majority of students learn from digital courseware. And digital courseware is not an ebook. This is important to stress. The ebook is basically still a book. It's just behind a screen. And you read an ebook the same way as you read a physical book. Ebooks make sense. They are great for research, for retrieval, because you can research a library with hundreds of thousands of ebooks within seconds, what you can't do with print books. So ebooks are great for that purpose. But for learning, they are not much different from a print book. In some cases, they're actually not even as good as, because it's much more difficult to make annotations and things. For us, the innovation is digital courseware. And digital courseware, they might include an ebook, but what they essentially are is they are personalized learning paths. And so the student works through a certain topic, and the system recognizes what the student understands and what he or she did not understand. So it adapts the learning path in a way that it suggests certain areas to repeat, to dive deeper, to give certain tests, to make conclusion from the results of the test of where the student has a certain lack of knowledge. And adapts then the content according to these findings. At the same time, the teacher can monitor what the class is learning and how they're learning. So the teacher knows on a Monday morning Did the students actually do what they were supposed to do? Have they understood what he taught the last week? So this kind of thing is what courseware, digital courseware, does. And you might combine this with a book, but it is fundamentally beyond what a book does in learning.
I see. Well, it sounds quite intelligent, digital courseware.
It is a very, I mean, it uses artificial intelligence, it uses a high developed, so this is why I made such a point in underlining this is not an ebook. This is something entirely different in terms of the sophistication.
More advanced than ebook.
Yeah.
But this is already applied in National Geographic learning here, right?
It is, so
it's transforming at the moment.
We need to make a little bit of a distinction between the disciplines. There are disciplines which have started to go the digital route earlier and others later. So for example, the traditional, the STEM, the science, technology, mathematics, etc. These disciplines, which we all serve because we supply universities, have gone earlier digital. So if you go to classrooms today, you find predominantly in classrooms teaching chemistry, physics, statistics, math, digital courseware, and books have almost entirely disappeared, at least in the United States and a number of other markets. Language is a little bit on the later end of the spectrum. Language is still taught a lot in the world in classrooms with a teacher and a book, and the digital components play more a supportive role. So for example, you go home and then you listen to a TED talk, and then you do certain tests and certain quizzes. You speak, and the voice recognition of the system recognizes your voice and makes suggestions for your pronunciation. You know, these kind of things are more supportive, but there's today in language classrooms you still find a book, and digital play this kind of supporting role.
And the supporting role is getting more and more important.
And it's getting more and more important. And today, specifically in China, to your previous question, what's different in China or unique? China has championed the online tutoring. And the online tutoring companies like VIP Kids have hundreds of thousands of students, kids in parts, small kids, who learn online, purely online. It's a pure all digital experience. And these companies use our material to create online courses. And these are digital, pure digital learning experiences, which we see mainly in China progressing on an incredibly fast path. So there is also a digital-only language learning world, but there's also in all countries, including China, still the traditional students come into a classroom and speak with the teacher, speak to each other, have a book, use digital technology to enhance learning.
I see. Do you think that the combination of the traditional mode and the digital mode is the better, or is the future?
It is. I mean, it's always difficult to speculate about the future, but today we can certainly say that these kind of hybrid situations are very powerful and increase output because they combine the advantages of both. It's. I think in the past we only had books, because there wasn't anything else. And then came digital, and a lot of people said, oh, we don't need books anymore, and went straight to all digital, and then made digital to a goal in its own right. That often hasn't worked. And specifically in language learning, you need the social interaction. People who go just to a computer to learn language without seeing a teacher, without having peers, that has proven not to be very effective.
Exactly.
You need a combination of both, and therefore I think the hybrid solutions today are very powerful.
Very good point. I really agree with you. The interactive skills, communicative skills, those skills can only be taught and learned by talking to real people.
Yeah, right. And they matter in language learning obviously more than a statistic.
Exactly. And also you mentioned TED Talk. It's also kind of like a source of the material that you're using at Cengage, right?
Yeah, we are the exclusive partner in education for TED Talks, and they line up very nicely with what we said earlier about National Geographic. For us, it is to provide original content, not made up stories, but fascinating content, which is interesting for the language learners, just to interact with the content, and then they basically learn language almost without noticing, because TED Talks are fascinating in its own right. And there's another component which makes TED Talks very interesting. that the way we understand English, and we've talked about that, is that English is not anymore owned by the United Kingdom or the United States. English today is a global language. They're speaking way more people English as a second language than actually people speaking English in the mother tongue. And if you listen to the TED Talks, the majority of people in the TED Talk speak English not as their first language.
As their second language.
They all speak English, but they speak it as a second language. So this is how you hear English today. So it's another element of real world experience by hearing people speaking in their second language, English, talking about fascinating topics. That's what makes TED Talks for us so attractive.
Very good. And it's very good news for the Chinese English learners. They have to really know that. That's called kind of global, international English.
It's a global, with a lot of facets.
Not just British English or American English. It's international English.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not this kind of, you have to speak exactly this way, otherwise it's perceived as being wrong. We have moved away from that.
Oh, that's good. That's good for our students, especially the Chinese English learners, to know that. Because I know many of my friends, they like to take some pronunciation classes to learn English, to speak British English or American English. It's okay if you do that, but that's not necessary. Right?
It's as long as you have a functional conversation. I think sometimes people need to enhance their pronunciation because otherwise it's difficult to understand them. That is something different. But to learn English the way the British speak, you can do this as your hobby. I mean, nothing wrong with it, as you said. But it's not the kind of goal we have today for global language learning.
And I heard from your colleague, Allen, and you are currently Cengage is transforming your business mode from B2B to B2C. Is that right?
I think it's not directly B2C because we predominantly serve schools and learning institutions with material. We don't necessarily go directly to the student. We leave this to the institutions. Maybe what was meant by this is that today we know what the learner does. When you produce a book and you give it to school, you have no idea what happens with the book and the learning. This is invisible to you. But today we can actually, when students today use our language platforms or the statistic platforms, we know exactly what the students do. We can mine the data and use them to enhance the platforms.
I see.
That is probably what she meant by that we are closer to the end user. And we are connected now to the end user the way we as publishers have never been when we published books and just handed them over.
Now you know the need for the users more, so you can develop better books for the users.
We know what they understand and what they don't understand. We know where we have to change our product. We know when we need to serve them different content in a way this has never been possible in the print world.
Very good. So it's a keep getting better and better experience. It's like iPhone gets upgraded every year. So your book
a constantly learning system,
constantly upgrading as well.
And books in the past we upgraded every other year, or every 3 years or 4 years, and not often based on real knowledge of the learning experience. Today we now have data, gazillions of data about how learning works, and then can on a continuous improvement change the systems.
Very good news for the learners out there. And also, can you tell us, are there any criteria how you choose partners to work with? You mentioned VIP Kids, that's one of the partners, right?
Well, it depends, of course, always on, what all of our partners share is that our partnerships have a long-term perspective. We are in this business for many, many years, and our perspective is long-term. We're not after the quick shot for the next year, so all our partnerships tend to be very long. We are in China, for example, we work with People's Education Press, with PEP, I think for 18 years. We published the Go For It series for schools, and that is a partnership which has gone over a long, long time. We hope it lasts for many more years to come. So that is one element all our partnership kind of share, and then it depends on for what particular purpose. Our partnership with National Geographic or TED is to get access to this very unique content. We have also partnership with technology companies to provide us with certain capabilities we have not developed in-house, but we want to acquire through partnership.
Digital warehouse.
Because you can't invent everything yourself. For certain areas, you need partnerships, and if you acquire a company or you just partner. And then you have a lot of local partnerships in China. To work with Chinese publishing houses is very crucial for us to work successfully in the market.
There are also many publishers out there, right? In your opinion, what makes Cengage stand out, different from them?
I think we are in many respects, very innovative. I think the way we teach English, or our material teach English, is very unique in the way I described that.
Yeah, that's definitely one of them.
But I can give you one other example in higher education. So higher education is now much more digital, and I think most of our competitors have gone that route as well. But the industry still sticks to the old model that the instructor, the professor, adopts a book or digital courseware, and then the students are supposed to buy it. One book at a time, one courseware at a time. This is the traditional model. We have just introduced in the United States a model which we called Cengage Unlimited. And Cengage Unlimited is what Netflix did to the DVD business, or what Spotify did to the music business. So in the past, you bought an individual DVD of watching a movie. You bought an individual song or a CD to listen to music. And these platforms switch to a subscription model where you pay one flat fee, and then you can use whatever you like as often as you like.
Unlimited.
And we have done the same for education. So today in the United States, we are not asking students to buy, intro statistic as a book or digital. We offer them a subscription for the semester for a low price. And with that subscription, they can access everything Cengage have. And we have 10,000s of ebooks. We have hundreds of courseware. And so for the student, there is not the question, can I afford this book, or do I want to go out tonight and have a drink? So maybe I don't buy the book, or maybe I photocopy it. With this price, they have unlimited access.
I see.
So there is no limitation to use quality course material. And that will inevitably increase learning outcome, because nobody needs to think anymore whether they should buy learning material, because it's just one price, all in.
Exactly. And also it also increases the individualism, right? So they individually choose what they really like in the massive, like the library there, kind of like a library there.
It's a library if it comes to the ebooks. Courseware is something in addition to that. And if they just want to have additional reading just from one chapter, or just one quiz and one exercise, and this unlimited platform comes also with a lot of services. For example, when you subscribe, you get online tutoring. You get access to online tutoring and to certain type of quizzes. You can create your own quizzes to test your knowledge. There's a lot of learning support material on it. There's a whole ecosystems for the students they get access to, and that is a complete change of how the education market has functioned. And it's very rare that a established player like we do are the ones who change the model. Usually the established players are too slow, and the innovation comes from the new entrances like Netflix, like Spotify. But in this case, we as an established player have kind of turned the industry.
You're like the pioneer. You dare to make the change.
And that makes us certainly very unique.
And you mentioned this happening in the United States.
We have this year introduced it to the United States, so this fall, and we will now go through the first season in the United States and see how it goes and how it works. And then based on that, we will in the next year start to introduce unlimited in international markets where it makes sense. We still need to analyze what market is ready for it.
I see.
But we'll certainly see markets outside of the US offering something like Cengage Unlimited as well.
Good. So for those interested learners out there, just be patient. Right?
It might take a year, but that's not that
so
long.
no later you come, right? You'll be available here in China.
Exactly.
That's really good news that Cengage is bringing to China. As an expert in the education, what's the point of view on localization versus globalization in the sector of education?
So for me, it's not so much a versus. I often use the term glocal, which
Glocal,
combines the word global and local at the same time.
Very good.
And we see essentially both things progressing.
At the same time.
At the same time. So for example, if it comes to use of technology, that is certainly a global phenomenon because certain technologies apply globally. If interactive and adaptive learning platforms, they are not bound to any nationality. That works in the similar way around the world. At the same time, we see a much stronger emphasis today on that people want, when they interact with the learning system, that they want to not only see the material localized, that it has local currencies or talk about the local political institution, etc., but also they want to have a look and feel of their daily lives. And therefore, we have asked famous National Geographic photographers to travel to the countries, for example to China, and to take photos from the daily lives of people around in this country, and to take these photos so we can use them for our material. So when a kid opens the book or looks at the screen, they don't see actors or made up situations which happen somewhere in a different country. They see actually themselves. They see how they play, how they work. So it's very local. We have done this in China, we have done this in Bahrain, we have done this in the United Arab Emirates. So these books, these digital systems, as global they are in the technology behind, they're at the same time very local in the way they look.
Related to them.
Very related to the daily lives, yes.
Very good. And that definitely can enhance the learning, right?
That enhance learning, this enhance the identification with the material, and it's currently a trend we see in the world, which happens at the same time while globalization progresses as well.
Very good. Thank you so much for taking the interview.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Before we finish up here, any other words you may want to say to Chinese audience?
Can only say again how excited I am to be in China. And as I said, I come here for 20 years and the excitement hasn't changed. We are right here. This week is the Beijing Book Fair, which is for us always a very interesting platform and event. So I'm happy to be here, and I hope that the audience found the talk interesting.
Yeah. And also, if you while you're waiting for the Cengage Unlimited coming to China, they can still get the access to Cengage books.
All the material is already available.
Yeah, all available in China. Go check them out, and definitely you'll find them useful and beneficial. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you guys.